What budget purchase ended up being your best buy ever? I went to Mexico a few years back with my family. It was our first time there. We only left the hotel once because it was so damn hot. And that day, after visiting an ancient temple, we decided to go to a cenote to swim and cool off. We arrived at the bus station and this kind of sketchy taxi driver approached us and asked where we wanted to go. My father mentioned a very popular cenote, but the taxi driver recommended a quieter place and said he'd do it for half the price, even though it was already dirt cheap. For some reason, my father agreed, which I thought was mad, so my family and I got in his taxi and drove off. We were riding down the freeway when he started indicating left. I saw no road where he was indicating. We turned off into a dirt track and into the jungle. For about 10 minutes, we were getting deeper and deeper into the jungle until we reached a house. My father was told to get out and pay at this small shack, and the rest of us weren't allowed out of the car. 5 minutes passed, and by this time, we were freaking out in the car. I didn't really feel like getting taken or anything, but my father returned and we continued into the jungle. Soon we reached a clearing with a few people smoking around a table and a couple with swimwear on. Now, I was a bit more relaxed because there were other customers there. After getting changed, we had a short walk to this beautiful crystal clear cenote with overhangs and plants hanging down. It was amazing. We got out and thought, money well spent. But we were led on a tour around for other cenotes where we swam under bats hanging in caves and learned about the history of the cenotes. To top it off, I had to jump off a 10-foot drop into a pool where I could see the bottom, about 20 feet below the surface. It was the best experience we had in Mexico, and I'd love to go back, but I don't think I've ever been so frightened as I was going down that deserted dirt road. To give you an idea, a long, straightish dirt track led to a house on the right side, and then continued to the main area. It was a sort of covered patio with lockers and a changing room sort of behind it. The first cenote I went in was down some wooden steps that I think went straight into the water. It was a narrow and long cenote that was quite deep. It went through a cave with stalactites hanging from the ceiling. The second cenote was a horseshoe shape where you could jump in or walk down a ramp on the side. You could swim into a cave where there were a few bats in the roof. Then the last one was a long, thin lake or river that went in a curve to the left. To get to this one, we had to walk along a dirt road for about 5 or 10 minutes. At the end of it was a larger pool area, and there were some steps leading up to a jump off the edge to the left that was about 10 feet. The place is called Cenotes Casa Tortuga. Nope, I've seen enough horror movies to know where this is going. Story 2. December 2012. Being out of Chicago, I bought a concert ticket through Craigslist out of Los Angeles for a one-night jazz concert, hosted by Tenacious D. After I paid through PayPal, the guy said he would contact the venue to confirm the transfer. I bought my plane ticket and hotel room in good faith that this would work. I flew down the night before, got to Sunset Boulevard and checked into my room. On the day of, I waited from 12 to 4 p.m. outside the venue by myself. At some point, I saw people loading equipment into the venue. I walked in through the side door and sat down at a random table for a bit and ended up talking with the production manager for the duo for a bit. He told me that hanging out was okay, but I'd be kicked out at 6 before rehearsal. 6 p.m. rolled around, and I was excited to get back in line. At this point, I was now at the back of a 20-person line. An old lady proceeded to walk up to wait in line behind me. She was definitely not the age demographic for a Tenacious D concert. She proceeded to talk with me.
What time does the venue open? I'm supposed to be inside already.
I told her at 8 p.m. Being that we were at a jazz club, I thought maybe she was here for the wrong show. I asked her who she was here to see tonight. She said,
My son and daughter are playing here tonight.
I responded, Who's your son and daughter?
Oh, my daughter Rachel and my son Jack.
Oh, let's get you inside. She held my shoulder with one hand, cane in the other, and I brought her to the front door and knocked real hard. The bouncer opened the door. I said, I'm here with Jack's mom and need to get her inside. Second booth on the right. We walked in, I got halfway to her assigned seat, and an older gentleman met me halfway and took her the rest of the way to her seat. He came back to me, thanked me, and talked with me for another 20 minutes while rehearsal was going on. It turns out it was Jack Black's stepdad. Rehearsal wrapped up, and he asked me if I wanted to meet his stepson. Yeah, I do. I met Jables, Rage Cage, Cones, electric guitarist, Spike, bass, and Brooks, drummer. They all signed my vinyl collection, and I got pictures with all my heroes. I then ended up sitting in the front row at the greatest jazz concert ever, sitting next to Billy Zane. To be honest, I don't even know if my Craigslist ticket purchase was legit or real, but I still got to see the show, meet my heroes face to face, and have this epic story to tell. Remember, guys, always be nice to old ladies. Story 3. When I was about 10 years old, my parents and I were in our backyard clearing out a ton of shrubs that had gotten out of hand. I had trouble focusing because our next-door neighbor had this really adorable puppy, and all I wanted to do was play with him. We found out that they were actually going to take him to an animal shelter because their son was not taking care of him like he promised. I decided to ask my parents if maybe we could get him instead. I was an only child and never really had anyone to play with unless a friend would come over. And the thought of having a puppy to play with whenever I wanted to was great. My parents agreed, and our neighbors offered to sell him to us for $20, which is really cheap for a dog when you think about it. I had that saved up and immediately agreed and promised I would care for him and loved him forever. So he became a puppy and my brother, and after a few days of debating, I named him Snoopy. Snoopy became my closest friend. He made me laugh, played with me, and would just hang out and watch TV with me. He was always there for me, especially through some tough times in my life where I was extremely self-destructive. He saved me from myself. He was there by my side through tough breakups, and all I ever wanted to do was lay in bed. He was an amazing friend. He was there to see me graduate from 8th grade, high school, and college. I hoped he would be there on the day I got married and maybe be around for when I had kids, but unfortunately, as much as we wish for things, sometimes they don't happen.
Jeez, who's cutting onions over here?
Story 4. A hamster, $30. I bought him on a whim when I was in a dark place and fell in love instantly. It only took a few hours, and he accepted food from my hand. By the 3rd day, he sat on my hand for the first time. When I entered the room, he'd wake up, wobble out of his hut, and hop up and down the terrarium's glass front until I interacted with him. He loved my cats as well. When they sat around or on top of his terrarium, he'd hop up and down and stand against the glass to check them out. Whenever I changed his environment, he ran around and checked out every nook and cranny. He really loved toilet paper rolls in the flower pot that I would fill with a soft plant that he'd nibble on. My dwarf hamster, Carl the Great, lived for 2.5 years and spread love wherever he hopped and wobbled. I also got a blanket as a gift from a grandparent when I was 14. It was clearly an afterthought gift they found at Walmart. My sister got a version of the same and ended up tossing it after a while. However, for me, it gives me the perfect amount of warmth while being breathable and ridiculously soft. I have no idea what it is made of, but it went with me when I graduated and left the house. Covered me when I was doing 6 years in the U.S. Air Force. Kept me warm on those cold desert nights when I deployed. Kept my tootsies toasty when I studied through my bachelor's degree. Was on my bed the night of my wedding. Covered me and my kids when they jumped into bed with daddy, and will be keeping me warm tonight. I'm coming up on 40, and yes, I have a blankie. Story 5. I bought some no-name Chinese brand earbuds for $5 and waited 3 months for them to be shipped from China to America. Then from America to Europe. A good friend of mine swears by these earbuds, and you could only buy them directly from the supplier. As they weren't expensive, I decided to see for myself. I ordered them and forgot about it. They arrived 3 months later. When I opened the package, it was just hard plastic earbuds in a little plastic pouch and some bubble wrap, as well as a packaging slip. My expectations were low, to say the least. I immediately put them into my phone and played Hotel California, and my God, they were better than $5. My mouth was wide open. I had to make sure my ears were not deceiving me. I plugged them into my dad's prosumer-grade DAC and played the smoothest rendition of Back in Black I've heard to date. These things were stupidly shaped and hurt like hell in my ears, but they were beating out full-blown €110 studio monitor headphones. The company that made them may be called something like Monk, but for the life of me, I can't find any mention of them anywhere online. These earbuds come with me everywhere, and I even accidentally put them through the washer, still working fine. Perhaps my low expectations come into play, or perhaps products just cost a lot less to produce than I'm expecting. But I'm still gobsmacked by the quality of those tiny earbuds. I refuse to purchase a phone without a 3.5mm jack because of those things. Story 6. A guy said there were a bunch of bricks in his backyard he wanted to get rid of. $5 for all of them if you'd come pick them up because they were larger than regular bricks and were very heavy. I grabbed a friend and headed out because I needed some cheap bricks for the edging of my garden. The guy's house was across the river and in a really run-down-looking neighborhood. I'm really glad I grabbed my friend at this point. We pulled up and the guy was waiting outside, and he looked like he was 80, but I knew he must have been a 35-year-old guy who just smoked 10 packs a day. So the guy takes us to his backyard and shows us the pile of bricks, which turned out to be 50 or so antique Louisville fire bricks. So I looked at the guy and told him, "I'll take half of them, and as payment, I'll give you $20 and some advice." And of course, the guy was looking at me like I'm an idiot, but he accepted my money and helped me and my friend load up about 30 bricks. After I closed my truck and got in the car to drive off, I told him to Google the antique fire bricks and adjust his Craigslist listing. I went back to look at the listing a few days later, and he had changed the price from $5 for the whole pile to $5 per brick, which was the going rate at the time. Nowadays, they go for $20 per brick. Best buy ever. Wow, talk about bang for your buck, huh? No need to spend tons to get something valuable. Speaking of great finds, I have more interesting content coming your way, so hit that like button and subscribe. The best part? It's free. Story 7. In the town where I live, there's a slightly sketchy area. It's not bad, but it's not nice either. There's a pub around the corner and all the buildings are dirty. There's some council flats nearby. And then there's my flat. An elderly lady had lived in it before and she'd moved into a nursing home. The flat went up for sale. Few came to the viewings, and of the people who did, nobody wanted to show it the TLC that it sorely needed. It was built in the 1970s and had been refurbished once in the early 90s. Some details are still original, like the fuse box, which sometimes had fireworks in it. The floors were covered in an awful carpet, the color of a peach that went bad, and the windows were dirty and covered with greasy blinds. It was a piece of work. I got it for cheap, way below my budget, and I spent several weeks doing it up on evenings and weekends. I ripped down the grimy old wallpaper and tore up the carpet. I painted the walls and got rid of the blinds. I contracted someone to do the bathroom and floors for me. Now it's a mid-century modern-type flat with a touch of Scandinavian minimalism. It was sketchy and cheap, but definitely my best buy to date. Story 8. I bought some Britney Spears tickets in a back alley near the Phillips Arena in downtown Atlanta from the Sketchy guy. Our stupid selves were all excited because it was a great deal for the seating. Keep in mind that this is when tickets are now printed from home and they're huge to scan. The pair that we bought were the OG Ticketmaster tickets. You know, the tiny pair that you had to wait at FYE in the mall for. We got in line and went through the main first door. It didn't scan. Crap. We knew we were scammed immediately. Then they physically examined our tickets and said, "I don't know why these aren't scanning, but your seats are that way." We walked all the way down to our numbered section, and there was one guy sitting in a chair by this massive wall with a single door to walk through. Homeboy physically examined our tickets. He was like, never seen these before. But he said, "This way, please." And I'll be damned, we were seated in the section where local businesses buy the sweets and stuff for their employees. Food and booze were free. We had phenomenal seats, and we got a free shirt and program. I still can't believe it happened. Yeah, you gotta learn to just play it cool. Story 9. I don't know if this counts, as the product was expensive, but hey-ho, it's an interesting story. Me and my friend were chilling in a mall when one of those beauty salesmen approached us. His salesmanship was so relentless that my friend and I both ended up buying the bare minimum each so he could leave us alone. He kept lowering the price and we ended up both spending £48, which is a lot of money for a skincare product. We still chalk it up to us being baked and not firm enough with our answer. Anyway, a month goes by and I remember the mistake and decided to Google the product. It turned out a lot of old rich people really liked its apparent anti-aging properties, and it was listed on eBay for around double the price at its cheapest. I quickly listed it at the going price and it was bought for a whopping £115, including the postage. Funnily enough, my friend had decided to open his bottle the second we got back from the mall to make the most of his purchase. He flipped when I told him the going price and even more so when I sold mine. Story 10. A little fluffy girl. I saw her on a free cat poster at my vet's office. She had been given to the owner as a present from his ex-wife. She was a purebred Himalayan and was not spayed because she was meant to be used for breeding. However, the owner divorced his ex-wife and claimed that his new girlfriend was allergic. I had been on the fence about getting her, but then I got tipsy at a party and figured I had room enough for one more cat. I texted the guy and got a friend to drive me over. This sketchy dude handed her over to me in a carrier with no questions asked. He could have thought I wanted to breed her or something for all he knew. He never asked for ID. Worse yet, he had named her after a Twilight character. I brought her home, spayed her, and named her Belle Belle. I was still tipsy at the time, so yeah. She's been with me for 7 years now. There's no breeding for this fluffy girl. She follows me around and insists on sitting on my lap when I watch TV. She costs me so much money in vet bills, but that's another story. Story 11. We bought an Ellis Island boat tour in New York from one of the guys on the streets. We were led into a van and treated extremely well, so we weren't immediately sketched out too badly. We didn't know New York, so we ended up driving 20 minutes through Manhattan with 3 men to an apparently abandoned, sketchy dock with no one there. That's when we were convinced we weren't safe. They gave us a post-it note with a number and said to go around the abandoned factory to the pier, where they would be waiting for us. So we took our naive tourist selves around the building alone, expecting nothing but to be scammed. Sure enough, we turned the corner and there was a big boat with a bunch of people, and it was legit. We had an amazing tour and a lot of fun with free food and drinks, so overall it was a great decision. But in hindsight, we could have been in trouble. Story 12. I was giving these college-aged young women a lift ride. One of them asked how that Craigslist thing went, so my ears perked up. The other said something like, "He complained he went back too far. Just don't put it back so far, duh." Eventually, I deduced they were talking about a recliner, which I'd been looking for some time now. I interjected and asked about it. The lady had a Lazy Boy electric recliner she just wanted $20 for. I was like, "Listen, I know it's sketchy, but if you got Craigslist randos in your house, Lyft at least gave me a background check." We pulled up, I ended the ride, and I followed these ladies into their house. I knew I wanted it as soon as I laid eyes on it. So this college chick was helping me stuff a recliner into my backseat, and all I could think about was that I only spent $20 for a recliner that's so lazy it reclines for me. Story 13. Seed packets from the dollar store. While in college, my boyfriend and I were broke, really broke, but I still wanted to do something to celebrate spring. We were getting a few cheap things at the dollar store and I noticed they were selling these seed packets from a big old bin that you had to dig through. 4 for $1, no tax. I immediately begged to buy one, despite our strict budget. My boyfriend was incredulous that I'd want to buy sketchy seeds, but dutifully handed me a quarter. I ended up picking out tomatoes. Well, we got home and I carefully placed about 3 seeds in washed out cans. I watered them and watched them sprout. I love tending to my little garden. I ended up with 3 beautiful, huge tomato plants. It was a bumper crop, more than we could eat. I sold the extra produce to my classmates. Made like $25. Good seeds. That's a really good ROI. Thanks for tuning in, guys. You know what they say, the best things in life are free, or in this case, really cheap. If you love finding hidden gems, make sure to watch the next video. What's your one man's trash is another man's treasure story? Story 1 is heartwarming. See you there.